All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Want to welcome you all to the kickoff of the fourth annual Rochester Advertising Week, or RAD Week. Uh, my name is Rich Pulvino. I'm the current president of the RAF, and we're really excited to kick things off with a great panel today that will cover a lot of what students need to know to get ready for their careers. So throughout the panel, if you do have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A section that's at the bottom of your screen, and then we'll be monitoring and can share those questions with the participants. So thank you again for attending, and I'll now hand it over to Barry Strauber.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barry. The path from college to career today is a journey of the mind with no map. The transition to a first permanent full-time job has always required a mental shift, and the career landscape is forever changing at breakneck speed. Most new hires get little or no career planning help from their employers, forcing them to make it up as they go. So we are very excited about having this interactive panel discussion with seasoned industry pros as they discuss the transitional bridge between college and the professional advertising world, and how you, as students with amazing raw talent, can be prepared and not scared about your impending deep dive into the postgraduate advertising world. So now I am thrilled to introduce our all-star panel of professionals. We have Becca Post, founder and CEO at Helen and Gertrude; Jeremy Schwartz, Chief Creative Officer and founder at Truth Collective; Jen Rampe, Group Creative Director of Vine Studios at Partners in Napier; Pete Vonderland, Chief Creative Officer at Flynn; and our moderator is Aaron Gordon, founder and CEO at Optic Sky Productions. Thank you. Take it away, Aaron.
Let's do this dance. Hey guys, so yeah, we have a killer panel today, and I think we have a kind of three sections to this. So we're going to kick off a little bit with some portfolio specific questions and kind of warm up here with some design heavy thought. And then we're going to kind of move into some kind of like job interview and questions that maybe have to do a little bit more about the job and the culture than it does the portfolio. And then kind of from there, we're going to go into some networking. So I think the obvious question to kick off here, and maybe I'll point this to maybe Jeremy to kick off and Jen to build on that, is when you're reviewing portfolios, what is like the number one thing you guys are looking for? What stands out?
It's funny when you start looking at portfolios, and I do look at a lot of portfolios from local schools, especially RIT. You start getting familiar with the assignment that was given. And what I love is when you start seeing the students who not just addressed the assignment, but went deeper. Speaking from someone who works at an agency where we do a lot of integrated campaigns, I kind of love it when you start also seeing that people have taken the time to really think about integration. Like, how does an idea kind of move beyond like one touch point, but to multiple touch points? That's just something that we personally value here at Truth Collective, and I'm sure at other agencies as well. But often within design programs, you get an assignment about a particular touch point, but sometimes students actually think about, well, what happens before that thing? How am I even aware of the brand? And then what might be happening, then it could be showing like what the assignment was, and then maybe what's happening afterwards. Is there, a social extension of it? So, in short, it really is about almost like plussing the assignment and showing more integrated work. It's just something that I'm usually looking for in my candidates.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think that, building off, going above and beyond is, you can see it. I think thought process is really important in a portfolio. I love seeing even some working sketches, some reference, some, how you got to the final product, I think is really nice, because we can look at a design and it could look absolutely beautiful, but I kind of want to know how you got there. I want to see, because then we can apply that thought process to the real world. So that's really exciting for me. And then, tactically, I think variety and clean like, just a clean page, like no misspellings, like it's silly things like that are really important when you start getting out and interviewing. And, I mean, back when, I think Jeremy can speak to it too, back when there used to be like we used to look at books, and, someone would come in with their portfolio book and it would be all tattered and like messy. And, I mean, it was a thing. So I think clean really helps. And sometimes also not too many pieces. I'd rather see some really good, like your favorite pieces versus and then. You don't have to include everything.
Yeah, Jen, if I can build off what you just said, I think there's maybe the other warm-up starter question, which is, to oversimplify, of course, is there anything that you guys don't like seeing in people's portfolios? Is there anything that you look at them and you're like, oh, I really wish they didn't put that in there, type of deal?
I mean, I'll answer that. And it does touch on what Jen started. It's not just having a portfolio of the work you have. Your portfolio really should be about the work you want to do and the work that you can execute, like, with lots of craftsmanship. So really, look at your portfolio as this opportunity to really present yourself in what you're most passionate about. Sometimes I have had portfolios put in front of me or portfolio websites put in front of me, and then the excuses start, well, this is what the assignment was, I really wasn't into it, or, this is just where I got to. That's not really going to help you stand out, especially in an interview or in a competitive kind of job situation. This is like I know it's a daunting time, but it can be a really fun time to put your best self into your portfolio. So if it's not reflective of where you want to take your career, I'd say leave it out.
Yeah, I think if you don't love it, don't include it. I don't, when something needs to be a caveat, like to Jeremy's point, like, oh, we had to do this. If you're not excited about it, we're going to know. And then my immediate question in my mind is, well, why did you include this? So. I
love that. Yeah, I can relate to, in our culture, there's a huge thing. It's if you're not impressed, neither is anybody else, right? So I'm going to actually direct this more towards Becca and Pete then. I think another huge thing that tends to come up, especially in this industry, is you see like, job requirements like 5 years in the industry, or it's like, a couple years in. Obviously, as recent, people are about to graduate, recent grads. I mean, can you guys talk a little bit about what you look for in experience versus portfolio?
Yeah, I can start. I think for us, when you're coming straight out of college, the biggest thing for us is your portfolio. I know there's a lot of stress around getting co-ops and internships, and those are all really, really great, but your portfolio needs to be able to show the work that you can do. So we focus most of our priorities on that. Once you start getting into, positions that require 5 years experience, yeah, we're going to start looking at what is the experience that you've had. But graduating college, focus on your portfolio, put your best work in there, and then, like Jeremy and Jen were saying, the work that you want to be doing.
Yeah, I would say for us, I like to see I do like to see some internships. I like to see some sort of experience in an agency. I think an agency is a unique environment, and to have like a good sense that it's right for you before you come into our world, I think is important. I also just kind of love to see, more experience the better, obviously, but I'd love to see some sort of experience that is just understanding the human condition. So, if you worked in restaurants, or you were an Uber driver or bartender, just something where you are in constant contact with all different walks of life, I think that's critical. And I love seeing that. Or if you spent time abroad, or just some way where you can come with a pretty good base of knowledge of like what drives people rationally and emotionally to the decisions they make or the behaviors that they exhibit. I think that can be a tiebreaker sometimes when you're down to like two candidates that are really equal, and like that happens a lot. Like literally, you just get like these books are completely the same. They're really strong. Love both candidates. They'd fit our culture, but I don't know. This one like took a little sabbatical and just like backpacked around Europe and like soaked up some of the world. Like that candidate's likely the one is going to get the gig.
Yeah, I can also build off that too. I think sometimes showing how you've been able to adapt in those situations. So even if your experience is bartending or restaurants, and not directly applicable to an agency, showing how you've been able to learn and adapt and be flexible, I think is really important. We look for a lot of traits that show that you're moldable and trainable at this level. So anywhere that you can show that, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think also building on that, we'd love to see some examples of resilience. You know, show us some places where you've tried something and it hasn't worked and you've had to go back and retool it and bring it back again, because so much of what we do is iterative. It's not, you know, unlike your student book where it's, you know, you're going to get feedback, of course, from, you know, your professors and your students, but you know, we generally go through 5, 6, 7 rounds sometimes to get to what ultimately gets out in the world. But the resilience to kind of get through that and kind of stay positive is another thing to demonstrate.
That's awesome. Do any of you guys have anything else to add to that? All right, we're moving on. So that's actually really interesting. Pete, one thing that you said is I think about resilience is like, you know, inspiration and resilience are like two huge things kind of throughout this whole industry, right? Like you constantly need inspiration, you constantly need resilience at the same time. I think there's a lot of students here that that are probably about to graduate, and there's a lot of students here that might actually be in that bucket that are looking for internships. And I think, you know, whereas to kind of build off some of the things that you guys are bringing up, you know, is there a difference between what you're looking for in, say, a design intern versus someone who's actually applying for the job? I know a lot of things you say probably apply to both, but, you know, is there any differentiating aspects that you might suggest to some of the younger students here that might just be looking for an internship for now?
I can speak to this one if you want. I think that how we approach and I approach internships versus full-time jobs. At the end of an internship, I'm looking at what you're going to get out of it. Like, what am I going to help you move on, and what did you learn? So, you know, everything is about working on real materials, but it's like the campfire rule. Like when you leave, you should be like better and cleaner and awesome than when you came in. So I think that, you know, it's more about opportunities at an internship level to position you for full-time employment.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, you know, building off of what you just said there, and actually, Becca, circling back to something you just said about trainable and moldable, I think we can all relate to that when people first come out of college and first enter the workforce. You know, when you're looking for to make this about the portfolio itself, when you guys are looking for people that are trainable and moldable, I mean, what are the, you know, regardless of an interview, which we'll kind of get to the interview part, if all you had was their portfolio, what are like the telltale signs that someone might be, even before you talk to them, a little bit of that type of fit? Is there anything that, like, maybe it includes stuff that's even outside of, you know, like potential design work, like other projects? Like what makes, you know, what type of things do you think would be cool to talk about there?
Yeah, I think some of the things, if you know you have a passion for fine art, a lot of times I'm going to say don't fill your portfolio with that. But if you can show how you've adapted those skill sets to maybe graphic design or motion graphics, you've used those in different ways. That's always really nice to see. I think it goes back to some of the things Jen was saying with showing the process work, showing how your brain has gotten from point A to point B really helps understand that as well.
And just to kind of dig in a little further there, because I think the process work part of it, when we're talking, I mean, even just like, let's talk about the tangible item here. Like when we're talking about portfolios, you know, are you guys finding a lot of these students already have their own websites? They also have like the written portfolio. I mean, when you guys are reviewing people, how deep do you go? Do you typically look at the one pager? Are you guys typically just going to the website now? I mean, what should they be putting the most effort into?
Yeah, on our side, we typically go straight to the website. It's kind of your elevator pitch, if you will. It's like, what is that first impression that we're going to get? And then we're going to dive deeper into, you know, what is the cover letter you sent us? What are some of the deeper materials that you've provided? But your website is going to be kind of your first impression.
I was going to say, I love a good website, and obviously with so much of what we do today goes back to a kind of a digital core. You know, being able to present yourself on a website is important. But man, I still love a nice offline book. I love a printed book and the way that it's presented, you know, usually with a little bit of personal branding or at least just a sense of organization. I think that that can really help someone stand out for a certain type of company, especially like a company like ours. You know, it's something that I appreciate. Whereas, you know, for a more digital centric company, it might be less important. But I think that, you know, showing that thinking, how you got from A to B is really cool. But personally, I don't love it when it overtakes what the outcome was, because I want to see really what the outcome of it was. So as long as it doesn't get in the way of that, I do love going through the process and seeing how they were able to kind of develop that work on through. It is cool to see.
Yeah, I would agree with that too, Jeremy. And the idea of, you know, on a website, you know, maybe you have the finished work and then you scroll down and you can dig in a little bit more. I don't want to go from A to B. I want to go from Z to A.
Right. It's more like related content, you know?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I love a good book, and printed samples, like design nerd comes out and I want to touch it and feel it. So yeah.
Building on that, I've seen some good candidates who thought through, and I think someone referenced like the purchase funnel earlier, like pretty much all awareness now is going to happen in digital space at some degree. So if you're showing that, you know, on your website and how that was manifests itself in a digital tactic, that perfectly makes sense. But some candidates have also said now, you know, thinking through to after awareness, consideration, you know, I wanted to do like this printed piece because it made sense for the brand, or it really required something tactile. You know, that's something that you don't see so much, because I just think like a lot of students now are just, everything is just there on the site and that's it. So a couple of candidates have really differentiated themselves for us because they've gone to that extra level of that printed piece or that very tactile thing because the brand needed it. I'm not saying it has to happen for every piece in your book or case study, but here and there where it makes sense for the brand, it can be a real differentiator.
Yeah, and just to build on that real quick, obviously we're very different because we're purely digital, so we're not as infatuated, I guess, with the printed piece. But what we have seen happen is we've had candidates come in and like you're talking about, Pete, is showing how a project can go a little bit further. So we've had candidates say, oh, you guys are really focused on social media. That wasn't a requirement of this, but here's how I would put this on social anyways. And so it's really knowing who you're interviewing with, what the agency is all about, and then figuring out what are those pieces that are really going to make you stand out based on what is important to them.
Becca, I really want to build on that point that you just said. Actually, I think that's a really, really cool point that you hit on, which is like know who you're interviewing with. I know that there's kind of like an interview section here we're going to get to in a bit, but we're talking about the portfolio. You know, do you, because the website is that first place you guys are going to, and there's the, you know, maybe the tangible one-sheeter. Do you think students, as they're applying different places, should do an extra step, say, per place that they're applying to? Like, do you think there's other items other than the portfolio itself? Should they be sending stuff, like even if it's just a thank you thing to the agency? Like, what type of other tangible items or digital items do you think also kind of play into this portfolio, just giant send out that people are doing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the personal thank you is always a nice touch, especially if you're your top place you want to go to, you know, pull out all the stops and do whatever you can to make sure you move to the top of the pile. We get handwritten notes still in the mail. We love them, even though we are a digital agency. So I don't want to crap on the tangible aspect of that too much. But we've also had people that during the interview realized maybe they didn't have a piece of work that showed exactly what we did. And they'd come back and follow up and be like, hey, I just adapted this real quick, wanted to send it over to you to show as an example. So that little bit of extra effort really goes a long way.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think a couple times I've seen candidates make something very personal. You know, when you're interviewing, you know, your target audience is the interviewer. So if you can really demonstrate that you've learned, what motivates that person, and send something back that isn't just like so formulaic, but captures something in an interview that shows you really listened, or you took something away from it that you might have learned. One candidate I remember a few years ago did that. She interviewed with like 5 or 6 different people in the shop, and then like literally like within like 24 hours, like all of us got something back from her, but it was all personalized to us specifically. And that blew us away because it meant, 1, she really listened. 2, she worked like all night long to send this thing, because it wasn't just like a little thank you note either. She like sent something physical. So we were like, holy cow, demonstrated work ethic, that she really listened. And that was a case where it was down to 2 very close candidates, and she got the job.
I'm probably going to date myself now, but back when I first started, looking for my jobs, the only way that we could actually understand a little bit about the inner workings of an agency was by looking at this book called The Agency Red Book. I'm sure Pete might remember that. Remember that, Pete?
Well, yeah, because you showed me your book coming out of college.
But, it was like, there's so many opportunities right now to learn what's going on at agencies through their social channels, through, online, industry, trade books, versus literally having to get your hands on a printed copy of an ad week or an ad age or something. I think it's really cool when people, not only are they listening what's going on, in the interview, but before they get there or following, stay kind of like, keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on at that agency. Like if they happen to have just won a new account, or they just launched a new campaign or something, that like you could easily just reach out, with a quick note or a quick email or something, and just say, hey, I really love what just came out in the Rochester Business Journal, or what you were talking about on Facebook or on Instagram or something. And it just kind of shows that you're super engaged. And I think that persistence and engagement can really help you stand out from someone who's just kind of phoned it in or showed up to one interview and then has moved on.
Yeah, I think it's really nice when, opening up, and I know we're not at the interview section yet, but, opening up questions, or, and having people ask really well-researched questions. And then a thank you note, to your guys' point. Yeah, not something that's formulaic. I remember being in an interview, and somehow we started talking about, hybrid skills and unicorns, looking for that perfect person for the fit. And this girl sent back a thank you note that had a unicorn on it that she drew. And it was just really cute. It showed that you were listening, that you were engaged in the interview, instead of, thank you so much for your time. Like it helps. No,
that's awesome. And actually, Jen, I want to build on one thing you just said, because I think there's another question here that a lot of students are probably going to be interested in, that has to do with maybe a little bit of that hybrid unicorn, right? So to take us kind of a step back from after interview process, when you guys are looking for those hybrid unicorns, right? Like, I know it depends upon every agency, right? I know, Becca, your agency is going to be looking for someone completely different necessarily than what Partners or what Truth Collective or what Flynn might be looking for. But do you find, are there certain skills now beyond design that you're consistently looking for? Like, do you want your designers to also know how to code? Do you want, designers to know, whether it's CSS, HTML, or do you want them to know some other skill that is kind of inherent now in how you see their job? Has there been a little bit of an evolution there where you can almost say with certainty you're going to be looking for this, this, and this?
I think that it's a nice to have. It's not a must have, unless that person is very focused on this is what they want to do. I think that, you come out of college a bit of a jack of all trades, and it's okay to not know what you want to do, where you want to go in that like deep dig on the T-shaped person. But, I think that it's nice to have the more skills in your toolbox, the better, unless it's, the jack of all trades, master of none. You kind of want to dig in a few places where you really want your career to go to.
Yeah, and I'll add that to that too. I'll give a little shout out to the new media design program, which is my background and a couple of other designers here at H&G. And you don't necessarily need to know how to develop your entire website on your own, but that base knowledge is really going to help you out if that's the type of role. If you're in a digital agency and you know basic CSS, it's really going to help you out. I think it also depends on the size of the company, the size of the team that you're joining. So when we were really young, almost all of our designers were generalists. They knew a lot of things. And as we've grown as a company, now we've become more specialized. So it's really going to depend on what type of team you're joining as well.
Yeah, that's an awesome point, Becca. And I think the other thing to go along with size of agency when people are applying, and this is a little outside of portfolio, but I think it still has to do it, right, is when people are showing off their portfolio to an agency and they've done their research, like you guys were saying, and they know where they're applying. To your point, I think, this very rare student is like already niched, and you want them to be trainable and moldable, but is there anything, is there ever a case where for a specific job, you guys are looking for something, even though it's a student coming out of college, you're looking for something very specific, and there's something you're finding more often than not that you're specifically looking for? Like, I know that's a very loaded question, but I think there tends to be trends, like every year, every couple of years tends to be like trends in portfolios, and you're always looking for someone who can like do that trend but break the trend as well. Is there any things that you're seeing coming that might put some of these students, especially if they're younger students who are just looking for internships right now, ahead of the curve in their portfolio than other students, before we move on?
I'll answer that. I mean, of course, just with the wild explosion of content marketing and social media, I would love to see, and I'm sure we'd see a ton of this out of like the new media folks, but I tend to get more books from like the design program or from the general advertising program. But I would love to see more motion. I mean, obviously, like just motion in general, time-based design is become crucial, and we're making more things move versus being static. So we're always making sure that people can think in a time-based way, but be thinking about motion graphics, kinetic type. If they did have the opportunity to do a live action shoot, like could they think about stories that move and happen over time versus just an image-based kind of static format. So that's something that I'm kind of like always interested in now. And I think that the programs certainly have the opportunity, to get that experience while in that academic environment.
Yeah, and I'll add to that too. And I think RIT does a great job of making sure that you're playing with the latest technology. So even if you haven't made a perfect Snapchat lens, like go in there and play with the tools, like they're available to you. I think that goes a long way on just during the interview and even on your portfolio, just showing that you're playing and you're learning about what is upcoming. Because, Instagram and Snapchat, they're not going away.
Yeah, I think I agree totally. I think motion is a really nice add. And, I know I said earlier, don't include anything you don't love, but it is really fun to see someone say, like, I am not a pro at this, but I really wanted to try something out, so I put this in motion. And I like that because I feel like, okay, you're always going to kind of push yourself and you're always going to explore your skills and kind of try and push out on the edges a bit. So I think that's telling in a couple ways.
Yeah, and I would just build on that and say that, video is, I think we cracked $100 billion last year in the amount of video advertising spend. It's like almost everything we do now is, I got a video component. So the more you can be a video ninja, the better, whether you actually want to create it yourself or not. But I see a lot of books now where someone just kind of picked up an iPhone or a camera and they just made a video. And it's important to understand, what goes into that and how to use the medium. So I would definitely encourage that.
You cracked 100 billion yourself? I'm going to apply for a job immediately.
No, just 50 for us. I was
leaving a little bit for the rest of us.
I meant the industry.
Well, as a motion guy myself, I appreciate the. I agree That motion is important. No, but I think that's awesome. I think honestly, we probably have already answered like all the main questions here. I know Aaron and Rich, we've been getting some questions in from students. This might be a good stopping point to talk about anything like a little bit more portfolio based before we move on.
Yeah, there have been a couple. So here's a good one in terms of what are your thoughts on the amount of process work? And I think, Jeremy, you touched on this a little bit, but the amount of process work that should be included in a portfolio, does this differ if the portfolio is going to be shown in person versus sent or viewed online?
I hadn't thought about that, like the way that it's presented. Obviously, if it's available online, I do kind of like the way that it would. Jen said it. We see Z before we see A, B, C, and D. Like it's almost related content. I want to see the results first of the whole effort, and then if I'm interested enough in that work, I could go back and see the process stuff. I have had students come where they'll spend 10 minutes talking about the process before I see the results. So again, I would still, like if someone was sitting across from me, I'd rather see the work and then we could talk process, especially if there's something interesting about that process. If it's a way to perhaps communicate how collaborative a process it was. By the way, collaboration is something that I love to talk about with students, about like what sort of experience they've had in group projects, or have they interacted, if you're a designer, have you interacted with a copywriter, have you worked with developers and so forth. It's all really cool things, and you could use that process to talk about that experience beyond the work itself. I still think that the work is king or queen, and then, you know, the process work, you know, kind of follows up and is a good way to sort of round out the conversation around it. So I wouldn't say that the format has to differ much. I still think lead with the work and then follow it with the process. I don't know if anybody else has a better answer to that.
I mean, I love seeing the process stuff, but like what I would recommend is like have it with you in case you're asked, because sometimes you see the solution and you're asking, well, how did you get there? And then if someone says, well, you know, I had two others that I really liked, if I show those to you and they pull it out, even if it's just like in sketch form, to me, like that's how I kind of really learn how the person thinks and problem solves. And we're hiring you guys to problem solve more than anything else. And, you know, sometimes there's some real brilliance on that page that didn't get explored, and just asking the question of like, well, why didn't you go there? You know, is a really insightful way to learn. But, you know, so I agree with Jeremy, like the finished product is the key, but I think it's good to just have there in case, you know, if the interview is not going so well too, you can sort of, you know, be like, well, can I show you something else that I did? If you can just see it in the eyes of the interviewer that it's just not vibing with them, you know, it can also be sort of a safety valve.
Yeah, and I think that there was another part of the question that was interesting, the difference between just online or in an interview. And that brings up a good point, because if I'm just viewing a website online, like I want to see everything, like creative is king, final product is king or queen. And you want to be able to take away to get into the next step. And then when you're in the interview, then that's the conversation. I've already seen your work, so now let's talk about your work. So being able to do a deeper dive on how you got there, you know, I think is really helpful. But I like it included, but I like it as a backseat.
Yeah, it's almost like thinking about the user experience about being on a website, you know, like plain and simple. You know, how should you attract someone to that well of work, and then kind of round out the content around it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Rich, do we have any other, that was a great question. Do we have any other ones that for this section, or?
Another one that kind of touched on it that I think we can expand on, from a graphic design BFA grad, do you folks feel as if you are doing most interviewing and work in person? And if not, how could candidates navigate a physical book versus printed samples in today's environment?
I actually responded to that in the chat, so I'll just kind of go with it. Yeah, I mean, it's so much easier to see the digital, just like open it up and kind of get a sense of like the candidate. But as I was saying before, sometimes following up with some physical is good, or showing how you, like a brand can really come to life that way. I think because we're more and more and more digital, like the physical is becoming more kind of disruptive, and it's a good way to get yourself noticed or remembered, right? So like if you get like a big chunky envelope or FedEx pack or something that hits your desk, or comes to your front door if you're working from home, you can't ignore that, right? I mean, it's super easy to ignore something in our inboxes that's just like, for me, is at least 100 a day. So I think you can almost use it as a secret weapon, and it's going to cost a little bit more to mail it out, but it is a way to differentiate. You can't ignore the FedEx guy walking up, to your door.
Yeah, just to add to that, like back in the day, I had my physical, like real nice leather portfolio, but I also kind of made a more modular format that was, easily printable, kind of slipped into this little designed envelope, and I could kind of take sheets in and out and sort of tailor it to who I was sending things to. But that proved to be a really effective way of just, first of all, when I wanted to reach out and get the attention of someone, they got a packet from me. So it was definitely more effective than just sending a resume. And then even post-interview, I could share with them new projects or new work, even on an ongoing basis, if I was trying to keep the conversation going, because either, I didn't, make the grade during the first interview, or there just wasn't an opportunity. I was able to kind of keep some periodic communications going. And again, this was like pre-email, social and all that stuff. So it became really important, but it really could be a way where someone could differentiate themselves these days by kind of creating a nice little package. And I have seen some candidates send some really nice mailable, printed matter to us, and it does stand out for sure.
Yeah, I think we're living in a weird time right now. So I'm pretty forgiving about, interviews are different. We're not getting, we're not shaking hands. We're not in person. We're, doing it online and, reviewing portfolios online. And I think that I look forward to getting back to a place where we can be a little bit more, touching the portfolios and looking at samples. But, agree with these guys. Like, if you want to mail it in, that's awesome. That sounds like if you want to mail it in, like if you actually want to mail something, that's great. But I do think that right now there's a certain amount of, realizing that we're in kind of a weird situation and adapting to that situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. Rich and Aaron, was there any other questions we want to cover before we kind of move on a little bit?
Those were the ones that were appropriate for that section, so you can move on.
Cool. I know that you guys kind of keep wiggling into like interview territory, so we're here now, because I think obviously the two are so tied together, right? Like, portfolio reviews and interviews. I think what I'm hoping to tackle, having not been an RIT student too long ago, is I think since this panel is so much about preparing people for the workforce, I think with all those ideas in mind about their portfolio itself, when people get into an interview, let's kind of start off just by talking, maybe you guys can talk a little bit about, say you've already reviewed the portfolio by that point, you've seen the website, or you haven't, and this is the first time you've met the person, although I assume most of the time you guys have at least had a little heads up. How are you, what are you immediately, in the first 5 minutes of the interview, what are you hoping to get out of those first 5 minutes? Because I think that always says so much, right?
I guess I'll go. What I'm trying to figure out at that point is this like a job, or is it just a continuation of their passion and their lifestyle, right? Like to me, like the great ones are the ones that don't really separate the job from what gets them out of bed anyway, right? Like if they didn't have a job, they'd pick up a camera and go shoot something, or they'd go design something or write something, compose some music. So I'm really trying to like figure out, like, is this like the thing that makes their heart sing every day? And like, would we bring some joy to them by giving them the opportunity? Because if we do that, then they're going to bring joy to our culture and our clients.
Yeah, I think joy is a really great word there. You know, we've already seen the website. We like what we see. We bring them in, and then it becomes a little bit more about, you know, personality, excitement. How excited are you to be there? How passionate do you speak about your work? Like what, you know, how able are you to pivot on, you know, just friendly conversation? Small talk matters. It's really weird, but you know, just that few minutes of starting out an interview and saying, okay, you know, tell us a little bit about yourself. And, you know, are you excited to jump in? Yeah, you know, I've just graduated. I'm really excited about this opportunity, you know, or are you, you know, to Pete's point, like just looking for a job? I think you can kind of tell that, and a lot of it comes out in, I don't know, I don't want to say energy level, but there is a little bit of excitement there. And that's not to say that we totally understand that some people are shy and might be really nervous, and that's okay too. You know, we understand, but I think that even with someone who might be a little bit more introverted, you can still see that excitement and that passion come through. So not everyone has to be like a extrovert with jazz hands.
I was actually just going to build on that part. Is like those introverts out there, like just like be able to talk about yourself and just show that you're really passionate about your work. It doesn't have to be, you know, rah, rah, look at me. Your passion will still come through if it's something you really, truly care about.
I think also just fitting the culture, you know, like you can be the perfect candidate with all the skills, and you know, we really try to gauge whether our culture is going to work for you, and vice versa. I mean, we're a fairly small, like 50-person shop. My department's like a dozen people, so you know, just even one person is not quite, you know, fitting it is you know, everyone feels it, including that person. So we're just trying to gauge. We do a lot in the interviewing process of just being very upfront about, you know, how we work, you know, kind of people we are, what motivates us, and try not to make it too culty or anything, but just, you know, we don't want anyone to get there and be like, oh man, like I'm just a fish out of water. You know, if we've gotten to that point when we make it an offer, you know, we really haven't done our job interviewing well.
Yeah, and Pete, if I can build off of that, I think, I know I'm opening a can of worms here, but I'm hoping to start a good discussion on culture itself. I think maybe some of these students, when they hear company culture, think about like ping pong tables and like pool tables, but obviously it's so much more than that. And Becca, maybe I'll start with you on this as well. For anyone who doesn't know, Becca's company just won Ad Age's Culture of the Year award, which is awesome. But I think, you know, can you talk to the students a little bit about, you know, how you might define culture past that, like, so they understand what a company is thinking about when they think about culture, and what you're looking for to see if someone's a fit, and maybe what types of things the student could be looking for to see if they're a fit.
Yeah, there's a lot of pieces to that. And we don't have a ping pong table or pool table at our office, just to shout that out. But a big thing for us is we hold people very strongly to our values as a company. And we expect them to hold us accountable to those and actually push us on them sometimes too, as they need to evolve with us as a company. So making sure you understand what are the values. A lot of companies these days will put them right on their website, so you don't even have to go that far to know what they are. And then ask questions related to those values during the interview. Make sure that you can talk to your own personal values as well. So one of the things that we've done as a company is every department has their own departmental values, which started with personal values, which has all laddered up to the company. So it's something that we take very serious. And asking about, you know, those non-client related activities. So what are the things that you're doing outside of client work? It might be, you know, having outings and get-togethers. It could also be the nonprofit work that the company is doing. So really understanding what does the company care about at kind of the heart level, rather than just the social level.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that, you know, shared values is really important. You know, you want to take a look at a company and make sure that what they're doing in the community, to Becca's point, what they're doing internally is a good fit and aligns with what you feel inside. I think, you know, another thing is what companies do to support their employees is really important. So knowing that, you know, how they're supported with, you know, even as a team, how, you know, how do you manage in times when there's a lot of work? You know, well, we all band together so that it doesn't fall on any one person. Things like that are really important. And I think that, you know, camaraderie and collaboration are part of a good culture. And so asking specific questions, I think, can really help. Like, you know, when, you know, during difficult times, what are you doing?
Yeah, I would say too, if you can talk to employees at the same level that you'd be coming in at, or even past employees, get a sense of their experience too. So if you know someone that was an intern there, maybe reach out to them and say, hey, how was your intern experience? What type of work did you get to do? How were you treated in brainstorm meetings and things like that, just to see the dynamics of the team.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Becca. Like, there's no better way to truly learn like a culture or just what it's like to be at a place and to talk to someone who's been there. I mean, there's things out there too, like Glassdoor, lots of ways you can kind of just do a little bit of exploration before, you know, or I guess wherever you are in your process. I think some of those things you have to take with a grain of salt when they're online, but just talking to someone who's been there, and particularly someone like who's been there for a while or worked there for, you know, a long enough time, because sometimes, you know, in our business, people can just be in a place for a year or so. And even though that sounds like a long time, it may not fully be enough to absorb, you know, the entirety of it.
I think that there's, when I've done interviews with recent grads or really anyone, you know, there's two key questions that always come up at the end. How long have you worked here? And what's your favorite thing about coming to work? And I think those are really important questions, because that gives you a little glimpse of that. And I'd say, you know, 10 out of 10 times, I always say the people. You know, the people are why I come in. And so it's things like that you start being able to, questions like that might seem really small, that are going to give you some indication.
Yeah, that's awesome, Jen. And I think kind of with that in mind, there's one thing I'd love to bring up, which is like, I think probably a lot of students are going to be walking out of school with an understanding of what they're looking for, and only to probably realize that it's like totally just one of many options that they have, right? And so as they're kind of thinking about what type of culture they want, as they're thinking about whatever, that's kind of like maybe the current job. Some of them are also thinking about like they're actually, you know, their whole career path. And I was wondering if you guys, maybe we could take a second to just talk about maybe how orthodox or unorthodox your career paths have been. I think, you know, to help answer the broad question of, is there one strict advertising path, or, you know, what can, you know, when students are interviewing for their first job, you know, what type of job might that look like versus the long term? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
oh, sorry, Pete.
go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say, you know, when I started in this business in the 90s, I felt like there was definitely an expectation of a more linear expected path, like in the agency world. But I've seen in what we've been doing here at my own company is I think that we've been valuing a more varied experience, because I think what we're expected to make on a day-to-day basis is more varied these days. So I think it's actually really interesting when we've pulled people in from other industries or from in-house, like, you know, we've hired people who have worked in-house at, you know, websites or e-commerce retailers. We've been bringing people in, you know, a course from, you know, public relations backgrounds, like all sorts of, you know, sort of tangential backgrounds where, you know, we want to make sure that they're curious and passionate, but we're not necessarily looking for like, do you have that 3 to 5 years of agency experience at all points? It can't hurt you. But I think it's pretty interesting to look at sort of atypical paths. Like even myself, I actually started out on the account side. I did some visual merchandising for Patagonia, and it was kind of cool because in the interviews, I could talk about those experiences because it wasn't so linear within a design or art direction path. And I think that it helped. And I would think that, you know, companies are pretty open to those kind of varied experiences, but obviously can hear from these guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say, and I have to say that I started my career in the 80s because I was 1 year behind Jeremy at Syracuse. I started in 89. It's a little mind blowing. That, I mean, my path was pretty traditional because back then it just was, you know, it was just a much more linear world. Got an ad degree in Syracuse and then had a couple of internships at bigger shops like Saatchi and BBDO, and then started there my career in New York in the bigger agencies, and then came here to work at Saatchi, and then stayed and worked at a whole bunch of different shops. But I don't know, like today, I would definitely agree with Jeremy said, you know, some diversity in your background is a good thing. Because, like, the beauty of our business is any given day, it's never the same. You never know what challenge is going to come across your desk or your screen. So the more you've kind of soaked up every aspect of life you can get, you know, you're going to draw on that at some point. You know, that said, like, you know, the thing about our business now is like in a way, like it's always going to be about creativity and very 30,000 foot thinking. But there's also a lot of like technical, tactical stuff that gets built and done that, you know, requires almost trade like skills, you know, whether it's, you know, coding or, you know, anything like that. Like, and the more of those that you have under your tool belt, like that's a good thing. Like, you know, kind of going back to the unicorn discussion that we had, like, you know, the more of those extra technical skills where, you know, you can not only ideate it, but create it. If you're like a shooter or an editor or a coder or just, you know, you name it, it's gonna help. So if you can pick those things up along the way, even if it's like Lynda classes on the side or something, or even just learning from YouTube or at RIT. Do that.
Yes, some things that I think about too is when I first started, you know, paid advertising on social wasn't a thing. I don't even know if Twitter was around yet. So the job that you're going to have 5 years from now may not actually even exist yet. So I wouldn't get so caught up on what is my title, what is the next title that I'm moving towards, is what are the things that I'm really passionate about and how can I just start applying them to a lot of different areas. I went from being an interaction designer to doing a product management role to now, you know, running a mix of people who, from statistics to media buying to design. So it may not even exist yet what you actually end up doing.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that I wouldn't worry too much about what your path looks like at this point, because I think it's really exploratory. Partners was my first agency experience 15 years ago. I really didn't have much interest in agencies. I worked as an in-house designer. Started my career as an illustrator. And the more things you do, the more you kind of narrow down that focus on where you want to be. And then when I came into the agency world, it was like coming home. Like, oh my God, this is where I've always wanted to be, and I just didn't realize it. But I don't know if I would have gotten there without that other experience that I had.
That's awesome, Jen. And I think speaking of speaking of experience and variability, I wonder if you guys could talk. This is a little bit of a stretch, but I wonder if you guys could talk a little bit about, especially with our current situation, locality versus kind of global working, right? I think some of these students are going to face something we haven't faced before, which is there's going to be a lot of remote positions that are opening up. There's going to be a lot of in-person positions that are opening up. You know, I think some of them might be asking themselves, should I go local? Should I apply to stuff? Should I travel? Should I, whatever? Could you guys talk a little bit about, and this is directed towards, I guess, anyone who's willing to answer, but maybe a little bit about your thoughts on locality versus not locality in a couple different regards.
I mean, as someone who worked in New York and then came here, I think there's a value to, like, if we get back to the pre-pandemic world where people are like moving to cities to go work at places, I think there's a real value to working in a larger market and a larger shop maybe, or maybe even just like a shop in a larger market, because it's just very different than being in a secondary market like we're in. I think you learn a ton. I primarily learned that I didn't like the big agency vibe. It wasn't for me. So the biggest value to me was my first 2 years of my career was I was going to go find something much smaller. So I would say there's, and it's always going to be, I think, the brand names in our business are always going to be great for any resume. It's just kind of the way the world works. That said, if you flip it around, I think, I pretty early, I did get into like a more of a mid-sized place, and that was like the best experience, because before I knew it, I was working on stuff I wouldn't have touched, big integrated campaigns and bigger brands, just because there were fewer people to do it. And that I probably learned more in those first, or those next 2 to 5 years of my career than I learned in the first 2, because I just was immersed more in it and doing it, and working in more collaborative teams. So there's value to both. And like the last thing I would say is, while this is a secondary market, like, don't be afraid to start here either, because this is a very unique secondary market with just an incredible amount of talented people that have worked in all areas, and you can just learn a ton by sticking around locally too. It's not like you impede yourself by starting here. If you ever do want to aspire to go to a larger market, do it a couple years down the road, or flip it around if that works for you. But this is a unique secondary market. Like the agencies we have here, the shops we have here are, and I learned this when I was involved with the RAF, taking our work around to bigger markets. It's a much better secondary market, ad market, than many others.
Yeah, I guess I'll comment a little bit as well, Aaron. But I do think you're right. I think today's, students who are going to move into the professional workforce, they're going to be presented with newer opportunities to work remotely, because I think that's just going to be the fallout of the pandemic. I think there's going to be lots of companies who are going to be excited about scaling without necessarily having an office and the physical requirements of having that employee in. But I will say, for a lot of people, and I love my introverts. I love a productive introvert. But even you guys, like, there is a benefit to, and Pete touched on it, of interacting with people who've been around for a little while, getting that sort of mentorship. I've had a few creative directors in my career really change the way I looked at the world of design and art direction and communications in general, that really put me and opened up my eyes to a much different world. Instead of me just looking at one particular style of communications, all of a sudden I was looking to much broader influences. So I would still invite you to, even if you're going to find a role that might be virtual, ideally there'll be some opportunities where you could get together with your team to have those one-on-one experiences. I'm not saying it's for everyone or everyone needs it, but I think most people really do will benefit from getting that sort of interaction and that collaboration, which we've touched on in a few different ways today, because I think it will benefit you maybe in very surprising ways. You can be very dogmatic and this is what I want to do, but before you know it, you're in the trenches with someone and your perspective starts changing a little bit. So, even if you find yourself in a place where you might be working, with a Brooklyn shop from here, or, in some other market, see if you can work it out where you can actually be together as a team, at least, once a month or once every couple of weeks or something, because I think you'll definitely benefit from that.
Yeah, I think it goes back to a little bit of that culture piece too, is asking how you're interacting with each other. Are you going to be in an island on your own? Because in that case, you may not be getting the mentorship and experience that's really going to grow you. I know us as an agency, we historically have all been right here in Rochester, but given the current circumstances, we are branching out remote, and we're starting to think about how do we, once people can travel again, come into the office on a quarterly, monthly basis, what does that flexible workspace start to look like? So asking what opportunities are there too, and maybe that'll open up some things that you have never thought about too, if the company is flexible enough.
Yeah, I think that the virtual world that we're living in has gotten very small, which is great. We're very connected through video chats, but it's also gotten a little bit lonely, and I think that it is easy to lose a little bit of that culture. So regardless where you're working, I would agree with Becca and Jeremy in the sense of how can you make sure that that culture is still being able to be spread around, even in virtual, and are you able to meet up with your coworkers, or are there things like virtual happy hours that aren't work related? Like how can you like continue to have these relationships with your coworkers when you're across the country or in across the state? So I think that's really important, and I don't know if any of us have quite figured it out yet. This is all new.
Yeah, and I really want to build on this point, so much so that I think Rich and Aaron, I think let's just save the questions at this point till the end, because I think it kind of jives so much with what we're about to talk about. But I think you guys are all saying amazing groups of things. I think the one thing that stands out the most too is I think we all know all too well after however many years in the business is that even as good as your portfolio may be, it still tends to be people recommending other people type of industry and who and so I think we're all touching at this point on networking anyway. I think there's talent development, there's networking, and they kind of end up tying hand in hand. I remember the day that I realized, like 3 years after being at RIT, that my major was a microcosm of the industry, right? Like I realized that all the people I was in school with was really the same way the network works in the real world. They all just went to different jobs, and we're all getting each other different work. And so I think the, kind of going along with the virtual versus in-person takeaways here, maybe we can talk a little bit about networking, and maybe we can talk a little bit about, I think a couple people mentioned earlier in the talk also, when you're interviewing, even just getting multiple people's opinions, talking to different people. Before I kind of ask specific questions, do you guys have any general thoughts on, at this stage, when they're just graduating, maybe any advice on networking in general?
I'm always going to be a big proponent of LinkedIn. It's such a powerful tool right now. Especially for, a lot of companies right now are working on their diversity and inclusion efforts. And there's a great little tool on LinkedIn that you can look up called Coffee. So if you fit within that demographic, use that hashtag. If you're, an advertising professional, I highly recommend it to really help branch out those networks. So we're not building off of just the people that we know. But if you're a graduate, definitely put that in your profile if you fit that demographic, because it's a great way to reach networks that maybe you don't have access to normally. But also, with LinkedIn, you can see third connections. Reach out to them and say, hey, I know so-and-so. Can you introduce me, or how can I get in there?
But almost similarly, you know, on LinkedIn is see what those folks are actually posting about and comment and get engaged with their, you know, with the content that either their company or those people are putting out personally. But yeah, I mean, social media just in general in all of its forms, from LinkedIn to, you know, more on the design side, like, you know, when someone reaches out to me and I look in their signature and they've got like a Behance link, I'll tend to go look at Behance or see what they're posting if they include their Instagram profile and stuff, just to kind of get like almost like a full look at what these people are doing and how creativity sort of is saturated throughout their life. And, you know, when I like the work, you know, I'll hit follow on Behance, and it's great when you see the projects go up and you have an opportunity to give it a thumbs up. But I would think if you are a student these days and you see that maybe a creative director or somebody from a company that you'd love to be working at actually gives a thumbs up, that in a way is almost a little bit of an open invitation to reach out and send a note and say, hey, I saw that you like this. Can we, you know, even just grab a quick chat, you know, jump on a Zoom or a Google Meet or whatever it would be, and just rap about it. So it is a really effective tool, especially now while we're a little still continue to be distanced.
Yeah, I think LinkedIn is obviously huge. I love seeing who people are following on LinkedIn, like what companies interest them, what brands interest them. That tells you a lot. One tip I got, and it was like invaluable to me, and I always pass it along on networking, is, you know, no matter how you're doing it, in person or virtual, it doesn't really matter, but just don't let the interaction end, really. And like the best way to do that is to say, like, if the interview is coming to an end, even if it's just like purely informational, I mean, you got to gauge a little bit if it's like appropriate to ask, but as long as it went fairly positive, I think it's always professional to ask, you know, would you be comfortable giving me 2 contacts of yours that I could call? And 99% of the time, the answer is going to be sure, you know, because we all know lots of people. And, you know, I think at the end of the day, we all want to help anyone get in this business, right? So if you just say, if I can get 2 contacts that you'd be comfortable with me using your name, if that would be okay, that'd be awesome. And then you'll get those names, and then you just go to those names, and then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And you never don't have someone else to reach out to. And it's, you know, as you said, Aaron, it's definitely a business, as all are, of, hey, you know, Aaron Gordon said you might be able to spend 15 minutes on the phone. Would that be okay? And just dropping that name is, you know, gold compared to just coming in, you know, it's just another person that you've never heard of.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, we've all been where you guys are. We've all been right out of school and trying to make connections. So I think for the most part, we are so lucky in this tight-knit community that everyone really wants to support recent, you know, grads. So I think that most people aren't going to be, I don't know, I'd say everyone's going to be pretty open with those connections and having a quick conversation or some quick advice. And I think, you know, building off of LinkedIn, the RAF, you guys are already taking the step by even attending this webinar. Take advantage of the RAF. I did not go to school in Rochester. I came to Rochester for partners. And I think that, God, I wish that I had the RAF when I was in college or a recent grad, because I really could have used that network to be able to point me in the right direction. So I think everyone's pretty lucky to have that.
Yeah, and take advantage of your alumni network, because RIT has an amazing one.
Yeah, and I think you guys are now speaking a little bit to like community and organizations that people can get involved in. This is a little bit broader, I guess. So I don't want to go down too much of a rabbit hole here, but I think one question I think might be good for the students to hear is, I think most of that, like most of what we're talking about so far, is very directed at, okay, let me contact you so I can contact that person to maybe then get a job, right? But kind of outside of the realm, because so much of this industry is personality and is just, you know, recommending each other after a while. Is there any advice you guys have for the students that that has to do with like what to do outside of just wanting a job, right? Like any networking advice of like, you know, transcending just hopefully this leads to a job, like what types of things they can do to just build relationships, even to build that network around that.
I mean, beyond the typical stuff like RAF or AIGA, I have interacted with some students that, you know, I've crossed paths with at schools, like even in community efforts. So I've, you know, all of a sudden I'm bumping into prospective, you know, candidates for jobs who are already volunteering for, you know, for nonprofits in town and are putting their skills, you know, to use for good, which is really cool because again, it kind of shows that curiosity and passion is actually being put to use right away, that they're already generous with their time. You know, it's kind of some of that value stuff that we talked about a little bit earlier. So that could be a way. You know, sometimes there's certain meetups around town, or, you know, just being out at events and just really staying just fully immersed in design, you know, if design is your thing, or, you know, whatever creative field is that you're out there, you're at the conferences, you're at events, just sort of always continuing your education. And I think that stuff gets noticed by the professionals that are also at those same events.
Yeah, I'll reiterate that is join those different events, even if they're not directly related to maybe what the job you're after is. So I'll use one example. We have an amazing project manager that she was a moderator at a Rock Girl Gang event, and I said, hey, she looks like she knows how to wrangle people. Like, let's talk to her. We don't really we're developing this position still. So even if it's an event not necessarily geared towards design or whatever it is that you want to go after, you never know who you're going to meet there. Or, you know, Rochester's a really tiny community, so someone probably knows someone that can get you the information.
And I would say that it's not just getting the job. Even after you get the job, it's really staying involved in the community is something that we've all continued to do to help us evolve. I mean, we're learning from each other as we go. I think COVID's a perfect example of that. You know, we're really looking to each other across this whole community of how are we moving forward? There's no one knows the answer to that. And so I think that community outreach is something that it is about getting a job that will help you get a job, but it is a continuation that hopefully will extend through your career.
Yeah, I would say I've always been a huge fan of the expression 90% of success is showing up. Like, I truly believe that. Like, you gotta get yourself out there, and harder than ever now as we're all, you know, mostly shut in, but, you know, you can still do it through your social networks. You can still do it through forums like this. You can still do it by just one-on-one outreach, but it's just like absolutely critical to just like keep being visible within the professional community that you hope to be part of.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think, you know, it's so funny that it covers really most of, I think, what we want to talk about on the networking side. But I think one maybe final point, speaking of COVID and kind of the situation we're in, I know it changes every day, and all of us are so sensitive to you know, it used to be like, oh, you know, next quarter or whatever, we usually expect this. Now it's like tomorrow, we have no idea what to expect. But do you guys have any maybe further advice or thoughts for students when they're reaching out, you know, outside of maybe you actually posting a job? I know a lot of times students tend to reach out a lot, and now there's maybe some sensitivity towards how they reach out to you, or what they might first say, just because, you know, they may not realize that all these businesses, you know, are going through the same troubles as everyone else in the same, you know, trials and tribulations. So maybe if anyone, Jeremy, I think you might have a thought on that we talked about a while ago. If you guys have any thoughts about that, I think they'd be good to hear that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously earlier in this talk, we're talking about being persistent, but, you know, there is a balancing act there, because you want to show, you know, these professionals that you're trying to court, you know, that you're engaged, but don't cross that line to annoying. Because usually I would think that most people are being really honest about, what's going on and saying, hey, there are no positions right now. We're sort of taking things, month by month, or, but I'll keep your, your site bookmarked, or whatever the case may be. I'm being, I think that a lot of professionals are being very empathetic to the students who are coming out of programs right now and looking for a job and need a job. But I do think it would be nice if that's a two-way street, that empathy also goes towards the people that you're seeking jobs from, because it is kind of a pretty uncertain world, for businesses, large and small. So, just be mindful of that. And if someone says, hey, I'd love to hear from you, let's connect in a month, or let's connect 2 weeks from now. Take that for face value, because maybe there's just a lot going on. Maybe they're short-staffed. Maybe, whatever's going on, we're all have experienced different levels of probably frustration during the pandemic, quite frankly, because productions are being halted, or, projects are being canceled just because, brands are a little bit freaked out. So it really just comes down to we're all trying to treat each other like human beings, because ultimately that's what's going on, is two humans trying to figure out, is there an opportunity to collaborate with one another or not? I don't know if there's anything more scientific I could say, but just it is just sort of about just treating, both sides of the equation well, I think.
I mean, I think that the thing for me is how you reach out it's like a microcosm of what the business is, right? Because we're hired to reach out to audiences to create a perception of, a brand or organization or a person or something like that. And if you're doing it in a way that's really boring, then I'm less interested. So, Jeremy makes a good point. Don't cross the line. I think some guy last year mailed himself to Droga 5 to get in Droga 5. That's just creepy and weird. Don't do that. But do something that shows me that you understand that, I've got a lot of stuff going on every day, and if I'm gonna see your thing over someone else's, just give me something different. Even if it's a subject line of a introductory email that makes me laugh or go what the hell is this person trying to tell me, because it's different. So I click through it. It shows me something. It shows me how your brain works. So, think about being a little bit different, but in an appropriate way.
Yeah, and I'll say too, we've had people that follow up every couple of months. If we've said, hey, we were really impressed with you, but we don't actually have anything available right now, follow up with us. It's figuring out what is that appropriate cadence to do that. But those people have also stayed at the top of our list, and we've recommended them to other people, even though we don't have a position open. So it's making sure you maintain that relationship in a really respectful way.
Yeah, I think that daily, weekly, when you get into let's circle next month, just be respectful of that. And that's something that we pay attention to. Oh, I'm so glad you did follow up, because the reality is we're all juggling a lot of things, but we do care. None of us want to, be rude or be whatever, we don't have time for you. It's just right at this moment, we might not have anything, but circling back in a month shows that it's still on your radar, that you're still being proactive.
Yeah, totally. And I think, for as long as any particular student spends sending one email out to meet up with somebody, it's some of us are dealing with 300 or 400 a day. So it's we mean nothing by we're just trying to do such an email catch up that we need to delay a little bit. But I think that's really good advice, guys. And I think more students should hear that, because it is right. It is building relationships. You're not just building you're not just saying, I want this job and just this job. It's Becca, I think to what you just said too, it's we've recommended countless people ourselves to other people that we never hired or that we never whatever, because, they had a really great portfolio and really cool conversation. So I think that's awesome. And I think we've covered, I think, so much in this section in this panel. Like, I don't, is there anything else you guys want to add maybe before we open up to questions? Because I feel like you guys have said so much great stuff already. All right, we're going to move on to questions then. So Rich and Aaron, I mean, have we received any cool questions to cover?
Yeah, we have a few that we can go through. So the first one, and this was touched on a little here and there, was just kind of a general job outlook. So, we touched on how the world's been impacted by COVID, obviously, but in terms of the impact on job opportunities in the advertising world, creative industry, whether that's for entry level, whether that's for internships and co-ops, what are your thoughts on kind of the state of those opportunities?
I think they're still there. I mean, I think that it just depends on the clients. There's some clients that are doing really well right now. The beverage industry is booming during COVID, healthcare. There's definitely clients that are busy right now. So as much as there might be canceling shoots, having to pivot more into e-com spaces, there are agencies that are actually busy and are looking for help. So I wouldn't get too discouraged.
Yeah, I'll say too that I think agencies are being more cautious on how quickly they open up positions. I know what we've started doing is, hey, let's do a 3-month stint because we have no idea where the world is going to be in 3 months. And so finding more flexible ways that we can open up those positions in a way that makes the business comfortable too is being flexible there.
Yeah, I would build on that and say that like that's how we've been hiring, particularly juniors, out of an RIT or a Nazareth or Fisher or any of the schools. Pretty much it's starting as an internship, a paid internship, and that's just to make sure that the fit is right. And then mostly we've been hiring full time after a few months. But the other thing, and we'd love to have you in the agency world too, but I think the thing to your guys' advantage is so many companies now are creating like in-house departments that are actually like pretty amazing. Like back in the day, like that was not where you wanted to start or be, but you look at like, Apple's or Google's in-house department, Facebook, Amazon, like these are companies that are like built pretty solid in-house departments that are putting out award-winning work. So while companies are being more cautious, agencies are being more cautious, I think there's just more places you guys can go work and do some really great work.
Yeah, the in-housing trend is definitely worth noting. Thanks for bringing that up, Pete, because there are some amazing brands just doing work for themselves. And, and whole new, sectors like direct-to-consumer brands that are, it's all amazing. So there's so many more opportunities to kind of flex your making muscles now.
And I think that without, the cautiousness that's surrounding hiring full-time right now, freelance is booming. So just, it's connections to do freelance, keep building your book.
And I know when I was graduating, there was a lot of push of like going after the sexy brands, but maybe looking at some of these other brands too that you normally wouldn't have top of the list, like healthcare is doing really well. There's some really great opportunities there too. So maybe branching out to what you see as being ideal rather than just sticking with, the Nikes, Oreos of the world.
Yeah, I think that's great advice, and like that's actually kind of a pet peeve of mine is when I look at books and they're all like these super cool brands that are just frankly easier to do great work on. I love to see someone who's taken like a parody brand, like a toothpaste, like a utility, just like something that's like a brutal brief and like brought something interesting to it, or just frankly challenge themselves. And even if you come in and say, look, this is not my favorite piece in the book, but it's like I really wanted to challenge myself with like something that's like CPG and totally parody, that's pretty rare.
All right, another question that came in, and I think this is one that probably a lot of students can relate with, is, first impressions. They're very important, but how do students overcome any sort of fear they might be experiencing and that they won't have another chance to, really make that first impression?
I think honesty is really important. I have interviewed a lot of people. Some of them are, very introverted or very shy. You might get a little shaky hand, and that's okay. I think that being able to say, oh, sorry, I'm just a little nervous. I'm really excited about this opportunity shows a level of trust. So you're sharing this and you're being able to kind of open up about what you're feeling. So I just say, just be honest.
Yeah, that comes off really authentic. And also just remember, like, you're usually in the door because we already like your portfolio, to like an earlier point. Like, we've seen the work. We want to like you, to tell you the truth. And remember that you're there to be you. You don't have to be there to be like somebody else. Like, you don't have to come off like some madman impression that you might have, or a cliche. Like, just show up and be you, because I think that authentic self ultimately will be more interesting, and you'll be more comfortable in that skin, and come off in a more authentic way. Because I think us, even as companies, we're all trying to be authentic. We're all being transparent, like new levels of transparency and authenticity, every year, I think. And what we're sharing with, we're trying to share everything with our employees, to build those cultures. So we just want to make sure that your culture is going to fit in really well. And by the way, and if it doesn't mean that you're bad. It just might mean that you're not the right fit. And by the way, you'll probably find some other great fit at another organization.
I would totally underscore what Jen and Jeremy just said, but I would also say a good way to conquer fear is just to be really prepared. So spending time researching who you're going to go talk to, know a little bit about them, spend some time on their LinkedIn, know the company, the agency you're going to go interview at, because, the worst thing in an interview is just like getting hit with something you're just not able to answer well. So if you really know their accounts, if they won a piece of business recently, look at their work, have a point of view. Sometimes I ask people, what's your favorite piece of work in our portfolio and least favorite, and sometimes like people are really good at that. Some people are like, well, they don't even know anything we've worked on. And I'm like, well, then you're not prepared, so try to spend some time before you get there learning about, the people in the place.
Yeah, I think practice is really important. I know that, before a client presentation, I'm going to practice. I'm going to, kind of formulate my words, go through what I'm going to say about each piece. You don't have to stick to it verbatim, so you don't sound like a robot, but practicing and feeling prepared will give you that confidence.
Yeah, I know back in the day, RAF, we always did the speed dating events. I don't know when we can get back to that after pandemic, but hopefully one day we can get back to that. But it's basically just events designed to get you familiar, a little bit more comfortable talking with professionals. Take those opportunities when they do come back, for sure.
All right, I know we are at 1:30, so I want to give a big thank you to all of our panelists for participating today, to Aaron for guiding us through the really helpful discussion that I think the students attending learned a lot today. Thank you, Barry, for being with us today. We appreciate you for helping to pull this together. I know we did receive a lot of questions in the Q&A that we weren't able to get to. So panelists, I can follow up with maybe an email, and if we can collect some answers, and we can follow up with the students after as well. So thank you again for attending.
Yeah.
This was absolutely. This was the kickoff for RAF's Rad Week. We do have more events this week, including diversity and inclusion session tomorrow morning with NCBI. We have our keynote taking place at noon on Wednesday with Nisha Tweed Bell, who's a creative director at Facebook and Instagram. And we're also having our Silver Award celebration Thursday evening, social distant at a cinema drive-in out in Henrietta. And we'll be showing a documentary at the end as well called The Creative Brain. So all those events, you can find out more on rafconnect.org. And thank you again for joining us today. We appreciate it.
For having us, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good job, guys. That was fun.
Good stuff.
Did we lose? That was a lot of fun. That was great. Good answers. Amazing. Great.
Yep.
All right.
All right.
I'll end it.
Soon.
All right. Thanks, Aaron. Take care, Barry.
Call it later. Bye,
Yep.
everybody.
Bye, everyone.